Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Aesthetic Impact Informational Services presentation this evening. We have Lyn Buchanan with CRV Control Remote Viewing Project Management. Welcome, Lyn. So glad to see you. It's been such a long time since you've been on camera.
Try to stay away from that.
Oh, I'm so glad we have several people here too this evening, and thanks for being with us and sharing your knowledge about project management, and something that's near and dear to my heart as I've been a student coming up through the ranks of control remote viewing. But I think it's very important that people realize why a project manager is important, why it is not only helpful and necessary, what the plus-minus factors are, how it separates control remote viewing from psychic work per se, and the reason we use managers as much as possible instead of single viewers. So at that, those are some of the things that I really feel are very important, and I'm glad to hear that you are here to share them with us.
Well, thank you. I've been sort of thinking about this, and there will be people listening to this recording who are not familiar with CRV, with controlled remote viewing. So let me start out with a little bit of background. We have 5 physical senses, and everybody calls the psychic sense the 6th sense. In actual fact, it's not. The 6th sense is called ambiance, and it's a repeatable thing. There's just no physical part of the body to stick it to. And you put 100 people one at a time into a hushed cathedral, and there's this reverent hushed feeling, and so it's repeatable. Put them on the edge of a cliff, whoa, and it's repeatable. A lot of people have learned to use this sense of ambiance to play poker. They look for physical tells among the other players, but even if there are no physical tells, they get the feeling of the room, and that's the ambiance. Psychic sense is actually the 7th sense. So anyway, the problem comes with psychic work in that when a psychic or a viewer is right there with the customer or with the person who is tasking them, that ambiance is there. I've heard it explained that, even if they don't make physical movements or physical responses or facial responses, that when you say something that they agree with or disagree with, even pheromones go out into the room. And what this does is it pollutes you. Well, a lot of would-be psychics and a lot of fake psychics have learned to do this. They have learned to say things in such a way that it will elicit responses from a person across the table, and they're not actually reading the person's future, they're reading the person's reaction. Now, the thing is that a lot of true psychics have fallen into the same thing, sometimes without realizing it, usually without realizing it. And so they're picking up on the room around them, they're picking up on the changes in ambiance of the person and their emotional responses as they do their work. Well, this acts as pollution because instead of getting the real information from your subconscious, you're picking up information that the customer wants to hear. And this is one of the places where natural psychics tend to be, drug off really far in their work, and it's one of the traps they fall into because they think that they are doing good psychic work when actually they're not. So anyway, one of the things that we learned to do in controlled remote viewing is keep the viewer away from the customer. And, you know, a customer is always going to tell you so much information, and they're always going to tell you what they think the target is, and so on. You talk to a detective. He's going to show you everything he's found already. He's going to show you what he thinks the criminal, who he thinks the criminal is. He'll show you a facial recognition thing, and then he wants you to work in a clean environment, and you can't do it. And so in the controlled remote viewing, we found out that if you have an intermediary, you have a person who will deal with the customer, and then will come back to you, and without pollution, will give you what's called front loading. Now, here's terminology that we have. The tasking is what's given to the project manager. And the tasker, the customer, may say something like, I want to know whether business plan A or business plan B is going to make me the most money. Or let's take an easier one. I want to know if we locate our new office in location A, which is near the beach, or location B, which is up in the mountains, which will be the best location for our new office. Okay, the project manager does not want to give any of that information to the viewer, and so the project manager simply comes to the viewer and says, the target that you're described is a location. Don't even say the best location, they just say a location. And then the viewer can work cleanly, and instead of logic fitting in, and instead of their imagination picking up on things and their own personal desires, maybe they don't like the beach, they like the mountains, or vice versa. Those things are no longer in existence, and they can work cleanly with their own subconscious mind, and therefore they can take advantage of that seventh sense and do so purely. And so this is why we have a project manager, a natural psychic who works alone, you know, just giving readings even. That person should have an intermediary between them and the customer. Now, you'll find people who give readings over the phone, and you'll find that whether they know it or not, they're bleeding the customer for information. And the minute you get that information, you're no longer working unpolluted. You're working with your conscious mind in play, with your logic in play, your imagination in play, your desires in play, and so on. So, the idea is that a project manager's main job is to act as a shield between the information that the customer has and the viewer, or the psychic, either one. And I would highly recommend that even if you're Madame Zoltar or something and give readings over the phone, get someone else to talk to the customer, to get what they want, and then to cleanly tell you what to look for. Then that project manager will call the customer back and give them the answer. Now, this may seem like a really drastic step, but what you're going to find is that the accuracy of the information just skyrockets because you don't have all this pollution to deal with. So anyway, in controlled remote viewing, we have project managers. Also, another job of the project manager is generally to get a team together, because we work in teams, and to task that team according to their individual strengths and weaknesses. And so let's say a project manager talks to a detective, and a detective has a case that they're working on, and they have, let's say, 5 questions. The 5 questions deal with a missing person's location. The next question is a missing person's condition and health and condition and all that. Another question is why is the person missing, and so on. Okay. If you continue to have a database of a viewer's work or of any psychic's work, you can have the database analyze their work to find strengths and weaknesses. And if you task a viewer or a psychic according to their strengths and not their weaknesses, not just general what's the answer, you'll find that the accuracy again skyrockets. And so working with teams, a project manager has to select the team members according to their strengths and weaknesses and according to the customer's questions. So anyway, the project manager then individually tasks each viewer or each psychic, and when this happens, they get the information back from that viewer or psychic, and it's their job then to piece together the information according to the questions. And so let's say viewer number 1 is tasked with question number 3. Okay, viewer number 1 will tend to answer question number 3 completely, but will also find some peripheral information which may add to the information for question 7. Okay, so the project manager then has to sort this out and get the right information to answer each question and simply report it. In the process, the project manager is going to form opinions of their own because they have the background knowledge, and so then afterwards they make a note that says, here's what I think from the information we've gathered a possible answer may be. Now you hand this back to the customer, and the customer may look at it and say, no, it can't be that. And the customer will make up their own decisions as to what the answer may be. But the project manager has to allow that information to get to the customer. Well, if a project manager's job were that easy, it would be a dream. It's not. There are a lot of things that are just detailed little jobs of the project manager. Things like you never give a customer an interim report because you say, well, what viewer number 5 has found so far is such and such, but we don't have any information in yet from viewer number 3. That customer is going to go ahead and act on viewer number 5's information, when in actual fact, the information from the other viewers may negate it or may alter it to such a place where acting on it could be done in a better way. The project manager has to keep data on the viewers. The project manager has to carry out all interactions with the customer and also keep a database. The project manager has to do all reporting and make sure that everything is all tidied up afterwards, that the final report reflects what all of the viewers said, and so forth. So the project management thing is a really, really difficult job. It's a whole lot more difficult than just getting a task and sitting down and viewing the answer. The job is not a desirable one by any means. However, it's a very important one. If you're a natural psychic who does work on your own, hey, get a friend, get somebody else to act as an intermediary between you and your customers. And what you'll find is you do a lot better work, believe me. If you don't believe me, try it at least once. You'll find out it's true. at this point, the job of the project manager, just the overview of it, is pretty complete. There are all kinds of little minor detail jobs and everything else, and do's and don'ts. And in fact, we have a course in project management. Anytime we train a remote viewing team for a corporation, we start out, with operations security. So we have so that we can brief everyone who's going to use that team in keeping the information and the source of the information secure. But then we start training the project managers, the management who's going to be over the team, plus the individual project managers who are going to be over each individual project. And it's only last that we train the monitors and the viewers. And so it's very important to have a project manager who is well trained, who really knows what they're doing, who knows how to deal with people and with customers, who knows how to protect the viewer or the psychic from pollution, and who knows how to read the work of a viewer or a psychic and translate that into actual answers for the customer, write it up and get it to the customer. And so that's a very quick overview of basically what's going on with the project manager. The thing is, you really, really need a project manager if you're going to do any work in the real world. And with that, just that very short thing, I'd like to just go ahead and open it up to any questions that anybody has.
Okay, to do that, we have more people here than we have mics, so we can pass them around. If I unmute everyone, we will get a fair amount of feedback. So are we ready for that? If you would prefer to type your questions in versus speaking them, we can do that too. But let me take some of these mics, or open up some of these mics. All
Mute
right.
mine back, and then if I have a question, I'll unmute it, but that'll cut down on the noise.
Okay. All right. Or I can pass mics back and forth too. I was looking up there. I think somebody put a question into the. David, if you have a question, I can take a mic from somebody else. We just pass them around, and that's why yours is off. They're all in use. Let me pass you one, okay? And Gail has a question. Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, hi. At the end of a project, is there any danger in the project manager sharing the report with the viewers? Are the viewers likely to treat that as feedback, even though the client maybe hasn't found what they were looking for yet, and the viewers take the, say, the analyst notes or the project manager's notes, treat that as feedback, and then that creates a time loop on the sessions that they gave from the beginning of the project?
But yeah, there's danger with it if you're doing it before the project is over. But after the project is over, you really want to do that. One of the reasons is because we have found out over a long period of time that feedback actually will reflect back into the past to the viewing, to the point of viewing. And if you give feedback to the viewer, they will read the feedback, which is the truth of the whole situation. And when they do, that truth will actually reflect back and help them do more viewing and, better viewing and more accurate viewing. The incorrect information will not be in the feedback, and therefore that will tend to mute bad information in their session. And so it's the use of time loops in this manner that actually will help you get more accuracy for the customer. Is it cheating? Well, you could look at it that way, but the fact is that it's a time loop, and it's a tool that a project manager can use to make a better project for the customer.
Good question. I gave you a mic. David, did you have a question? Not meaning to put you on the
spot. Please remember that the video here is going to be seen by a lot of people who are not controlled remote viewers, and so even if you know the answer to the question, but you think it would help people to hear it, go ahead and ask the question.
I have another question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
When you're working with a team of viewers, do you ever find a situation where the viewers start connecting with each other, I don't know, telepathically or something, and they start describing what the other viewers are seeing rather than describing the target?
Absolutely. This is called telepathic overlay. The slang for it is the neighbor's cat. And this does happen. This is one of the reasons why you separate the tasking according to a viewer's strengths and weaknesses. That way you're tasking each viewer with a different question or a different task. Even if, let's say, you're working with a detective and question number 3 has 2 or 3 viewers who are actually best at that type of question, you may want to ask them different aspects of the same question, because each one will then be trying to view something that one of the other viewers is not trying to view, and so it helps diminish the telepathic overlay. Telepathic overlay is a very real thing, and we've proven that, and it can quite often mess you up, because if one viewer is the strong viewer and the one who has the respect of the others, and he's having a bad day, telepathic overlay can make them all have a bad day. And so here again is one of the little details of the project manager's job, is to make sure that everybody is working on something different, even though they may be answering the same question.
Thank you.
I was just going up, and I've another browser open. I was looking at some of the terms and analogies over on CR Viewer, wondering if anyone who is listening, if I could pull something out of there that might help them understand.
Well, in that case, let me plug crviewer.com as a website that has a lot of, we're going to be putting up a very, very extensive FAQ page, which should have probably several hundred questions and answers on it. We haven't done that yet. But there's a lot of free information to be gained about controlled remote viewing, about the theories and practices behind it. There are hundreds of targets to practice with, and there's also a thing called the P2IT or P4IT exercise, and that is targets or just target pictures that would normally be used for viewing, what happens is you click on one, the picture comes up, and you get practice in describing that picture. And when you are actually going into a remote viewing session, then you're not going to see the picture, you're going to have to describe it anyway, but it gives you practice in simply describing, enhancing your vocabulary, and actually doing the work. So visit the website, it's crviewer.com, and there's a lot of things there for you.
Lyn, I don't know if this is a good or bad question. For folks who are interested in this for business purposes, you do offer, as you said, entire companies could come and train their own team. How long do you think would it take for them to become proficient? I'm talking realistically here in talking about already established viewers and people who have gone to school with you versus starting from scratch. So if someone really wanted to use control remote viewing for a project, say in the next 2 years, is it feasible, do you think, to have a trained team for your own business by then?
Yes, it is absolutely advantageous to do that. We have a lot of viewers who are actively seeking work and who are very well prepared and very well trained and ready to be hired. What we have found is that the few companies we have had so far that have wanted their own remote viewing team have wanted their own employees, and so they haven't really gone outside of their own employees. But I always advise to them, hey, we've got remote viewers here who are trained and ready to work, and even if you only hired them on a consultant basis, you could get started right now. And hopefully we're going to have that happen more and more as time goes on.
Well, we certainly have enough students out there that are doing a good job with their training modes. Oh, I thought I just saw a question.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Jed. If, let's say I'm hypothetically, I was approached in the sheriff's department or a member of the department, not, let's say, the sheriff himself, but like the deputy, and they had been investigating a case that was an older case, let's say 15, 20 years old, it's a cold case, and they were looking for information, and that would be, let's say, a sizable reward for information leads to the conviction or the resolving of the case. How would that play out known as cold case? Would a team want to take that on just for the reward money, or who would a person contact in such a case?
So we're talking for reward money versus and pro bono work versus a fee scale for a customer?
You were over-modulating quite a bit there, so I'm not sure I really understood the last part of the question.
Sorry, is this better?
Yeah.
Back from the mic. Okay. I have the question is, if someone was approached by a member of a sheriff's department and they were offered to assist in a cold case, not by the sheriff himself, but by a member of the sheriff's investigating team, just for simply giving information that can possibly lead to the reward money. That's something who would a person contact, and how would a team go about, let's say, presenting that information?
I think I understand better now. You're saying if you are a controlled remote viewer and law enforcement approaches you and asks for assistance, who do you go to ask to pass on that request? Was that your question?
That could be a start at it. This one, how it would play out, if it was just reward money.
Right.
Hey, let me, I still was having a hard time hearing that, but let me just take some stabs at just different things and see if I run across the answer to your question. Especially in these times, money ain't bad. Hey, don't turn down money, okay? And there is nothing wrong. And, you know, there's that old wives thing that if you ever use your powers for personal gain, then whatever, I don't know. It's an old wives' tale. Everybody uses their own psychic ability in one way or another to preserve their life, to gain better life, and so on. This is a tool. It was a God-given tool. Use it. And if you can make some money at it, hey, do it. It's great. In fact, I've had a lot of people say that controlled remote viewing or remote viewing will never be taken seriously until somebody wins the lottery, because money talks. And if you get paid for your work, do it. As far as not getting paid for your work and working, let's say, for a detective or for some police agency or some other agency, a missing children's agency, let's say, do it. It's valuable training for you, and it's valuable experience that you can't get just by trying to remote view pictures in envelopes. And so, yeah, jump at the chance to do it. Learn everything you can, because the thing is, you're not only learning about remote viewing, you're learning about yourself, and you're learning to talk to your own subconscious mind, find out what it knows, how to report what it knows, how to interpret what it knows, and so on. And so whether you get paid or not is, you know, getting paid is a good thing. But even if you don't, it's still a win-win situation, because you're gonna gain from it. A lot of people go through years of training in CRV, and then they don't want to tell anybody that they're a viewer because somebody might make a joke or something like that. What a waste of time and money and so forth. And I've had people go all the way through advanced training with me and then get mad at me for not finding them jobs. And, you know, they have the ability to simply get out and say, hey, maybe I could help. And, you know, you don't even have to tell people how you could help or where you get the information. But if you get the opportunity to do some remote viewing, do it. It's a fantastic opportunity. It trains you, and it helps you not only in remote viewing, but also in all of your life.
Okay, now let's see if we need to retask. Jed, Lyn gave us quite a bit of information there. Did that come close to partially or completely answering your question?
The other thing would be, and hopefully I'm not over-modulating here, is would a project manager be willing to jump at that and get others involved if something arose in that area?
In the reward monies area, as far as disbursement,
The group, would there be interest in people working something for a reward in that area?
oh, so the project manager who is coordinating the team, you're asking if there are reward monies available. Would the project manager be willing, able, or whatever to figure out the disbursement of those funds? Is because the project manager is heading the team.
And in terms of would there be enough participation from others in the group? Wouldn't there be enough of the remote viewers if the project manager asked them to come forward to help to do a project on it?
Okay, so law enforcement approaches a project manager and says, I have a cold case and there's reward money involved. Can you put a team together?
I would even go beyond that and say that if you're a remote viewer and let's say a detective calls you personally and says, I have a remote viewing project, or I have a case, cold case or whatever, maybe you could help. If you would rather do it with a team, then yeah, have a person that you know to be capable of doing project management work and say, look, don't tell me anything about it because I want to work this case, and let you talk to our project manager, and so on. In the case of a reward, listen, the project manager does more work than probably all the viewers put together, and so should be rewarded along that way. Does that split the reward and get you less? Yeah. But you got to also realize that part of something is better than all of nothing. If you don't work that case, you're not going to get anything. And so, like I say, it's all win-win as long as you're working. If you're not doing anything, then you grow stagnant.
Okay.
I think we have one student who is working in recovering lost art, and I think another one has worked shipwrecks, as I recall.
And we have other students who are both viewing and working project management in different things like business projects, archaeological work. We have done all kinds of moon and space exploration. We've done inventions, technology transfer, and I mean, this is in the civilian arena, even way beyond what we did in the military, doing espionage work and finding plans and intentions of foreign leaders and so forth. And in fact, while I'm not advising anything here, if you know the plans and intentions of foreign leaders, and if that's easy to gain through remote viewing, then the plans and intentions of business competition and so forth is also possible to gain. And is that crooked? Well, it's the gaining of information. Is it against the law? Probably so. I don't know. But the fact is that the information is there in your subconscious mind, and if you learn how to get it out and start using it, hey, your whole life is going to be better, not just your remote viewing sessions.
Since it was your project, I believe, I think, if I recall, didn't you get some feedback that there was going to be some construction proposed as far as a moon structure of some kind? Didn't you work a project that looks like somebody actually listened to what you had to say?
Yeah, in fact, if you go to crviewer.com and you look under my name for personnel, and up above that it'll say artwork, and you go into artwork and you go into space, you'll see the picture that we put on the front page of the report to a moon exploration company. They wanted to know how to build a temporary disposable base to house workers who would be there to build the first moon base. And all we did was we said, okay, we'll describe how to do it. So we simply task our viewers to move forward to a time when it was already built and describe it. And what they came back with was a sheet of plastic, thick mylar plastic that was would reflect the rays of the sun and all. And it was stretched across a crater, and the crater was filled with 16 pounds of air, which is sea level, and which is about half of what you'd put in a bicycle tire. And since it was plastic, if a meteorite hit the dome, you know, that was over the crater, it wouldn't shatter anything, it'd just punch a hole. And if it punched a hole, then you go up with some duct tape, cover up the hole, and you're good to go again. And when this moon exploration company found out that they could build this temporary shelter, you know, with a roll of plastic and a bunch of rolls of duct tape, I mean, they were ecstatic. And so I won't go on with that, but we have gotten feedback about that that project, and that moon exploration company is actually using such a temporary shelter.
It took me a little while to find that. The music you heard was you and your personal site with Linda. Actually under CRV services. There we go. Moonbase Alpha. And it's under CRV services. And it's right at the bottom. It says you can click on that and see that project.
Oh, it's under services? It should be under personnel, where we have myself and Mel.
It is.
And
then right under Mel.
Up at the top of my bio is a thing saying artwork. So I didn't know it was under services. I don't know what it's doing there.
Well, because you did it. Artwork has some very lovely pieces of art that you did. And under CRV services, it talks about, there are 2 click here's. It talks about team training and everything you've been speaking to this evening. And then at the bottom, it says click here. For an example of our work in the scientific research and development field, please read one of our reports used here with the customer's permission. That sample report can be read and or downloaded by clicking. And it goes right through to Moonbase Alpha, study of the most efficient method for construction of the first temporary base on the moon.
Maybe I should look at my website more often.
Actually, I just told my people, my designers, they were saying, check and see if this all works. I said, well, actually, I'm counting on you to mind the store. I'm kind of busy. So, more questions, anyone?
Okay, basically then, to kind of summarize, pollution is a viewer's worst enemy, and if you can have an intermediary between you and the customer, customers always pollute. Even if they say, I'm not going to tell you anything, it's the way they don't tell you something will still pollute you. I was on a radio show in Long Beach, California about 2 weeks ago, and I don't usually do demos, but this one was a friend of mine, and so he wanted me to do a demo, and he said, describe the front of his house. In the session, I kept getting a trailer back and forth, and so I did the whole session and just reported what I got. And when I did the analysis, I did my own analysis and summary writing and all that. He had said the front of his house, and so I took the information that would possibly also apply to a house, and I described his house. Well, what happened was, after I read the thing on the show, he said, well, I think you missed this one because I live in a trailer. And, you know, the customer will always, even inadvertently, pollute you. And pollution is a viewer's worst enemy. So it's good to have an intermediary that can deal with the customer and then let you work in a clean, pollution-free environment.
I have another follow-up question to that.
Go ahead.
Would it be best then, if having a project management and you have viewers, to also have each other the analysis, basically swapping each viewer swapping their sessions with another viewer and do the analysis on somebody else other than your own?
That can work. Generally, what happens when you do that is that each viewer will view the other person's work in light of what they got in their own work. And so if you do have a team and you don't have a project manager per se, it's generally a better idea for all the viewers to hand their sessions to the one viewer who did not view the target. And that way that one viewer can act as an analyst without being polluted by their own perceptions. So, you know, it's good to have a team. Even if you don't have a good qualified project manager or a good qualified and trained analyst, it's good to have a team and work with others. So, like I say, generally, the situation where you just sort of play round robin, it gets more polluted than if you had each viewer pollute them. I mean, if you had each viewer analyze their own session.
Just in the terminology area on CR Viewer, like massive multiple tasking explains it that pretty well, as far as no more than a single tasking question should be given for each session. You know, if you just went through a project a few months ago with 21 or 22 viewers and a ton of questions, and it took forever, and was probably, you know, War and Peace was probably a shorter volume. But this is an example why you don't want to have, will the expected event happen during the span of this year or next? And if it does happen at all, when and where will the major indicators occur leading up to it, and who will be the people involved? Give any names and descriptions you can get. If it doesn't happen, what factors will contribute to it not happening, and what else will happen in its place? That's just a little bit busy for a remote viewer.
The rule is one question per one session. And, you know, if you're going to have one session, have one question. If you're going to ask a viewer, the same viewer, two different questions, make it two different sessions. Now, like I said before, they will tend to answer the question you ask them or the one you task them with. But in the process, they're going to pick up peripheral information that may also add to somebody else's answer for another question. the project that Teresa is talking about, we had 24 viewers, have 24 viewers, and there was one question. And so the purpose of the whole thing was to see the viewers work so that this customer could decide which viewers he wanted to hire for his own remote viewing team. And the question that went out to the viewers was all the same. All the viewers got the same question. It was an honest question, and it was a simple thing: describe what's in the box. Now, I made sure on this that the customer was not giving us a test question, and the fact is that by talking to the customer, which a viewer could not do without pollution, by talking to the customer, I found out that this box was of unknown size, and they had no idea what was in it. And it was of great interest to them to find out what was in it, because the box was basically sealed, and there was no way to find the contents, even X-ray or whatever. So anyway, they were very interested in finding out what was in the box. We will not get feedback from it probably for a couple of years. However, the customer has been looking over the sessions, and hopefully will make a decision pretty soon as to who he wants to hire to have on his staff as a personal remote viewer. And so hopefully some good will come out of this, even though the 24 people will probably not get feedback for several years. He's going to pay them. We're still waiting for the money, but he's going to pay all of the viewers who worked that project.
That's always good news. It's nice to be able to do something that's real and true instead of just thinking that you're practicing for forever.
Pictures and envelopes are extremely good training for remote viewers, but better training is actual experience in the real world. And you come to a time when you kind of get tired of pictures and envelopes. I mean, it's, you know, to say to someone, you hide a picture in an envelope and I'll describe it without looking at it, to them that's a miracle. To you, after you do the first couple of hundred of those, it gets to be kind of old hat, and you want something more. I was dealing with a paper done by a psychotherapist, and he was talking about mankind achieving emotional perfection and all that, and I said, well, it's not going to happen. And he was talking about Plato's chair. Plato said that in heaven there is a perfect chair, and because there's something holy in each one of us, we know where to sit, where we can and can't sit. And he was using that as his example for a lecture he was going to give. And I said, what you've got to understand is that if we could go to heaven and sit in the perfect chair, we would still look over to the side at Zeus's throne and wonder what it would be like to sit there instead. And, you know, mankind doesn't quit. But as you do session after session of pictures and envelopes, you really need to get out there into the world, get your hands dirty, get your, you know, get your bad knocks and all that, and actually get out and do a little work in the real world. You would be amazed at how much it helps you.
Here is, I've been looking and looking for this example. You were trying to explain about pollution. So anyone who doesn't know anything about control remote viewing would understand why a neutrally worded question or well-formed question to a psychic is important if they hear why the customer should not tell a viewer directly this information. For example, it would be destructive to tell a viewer, yesterday evening a 6-year-old girl was gang raped, thrown into the trunk of a car and kidnapped. Describe her present physical and emotional condition. What would you have to say about that?
For one thing, it doesn't take a psychic to know the physical and emotional condition. Second, you have polluted the viewer to the point where even if the well, whether the event did or did not happen, whether it was maybe just suspected or lied about, they couldn't find the truth if they wanted to because of all that pollution. I saw a project for the students of there was a mock project for the students of another trainer, not a controlled remote viewing trainer, but a self-styled remote viewing trainer. And the task that went to the viewer was describe the activities of the gentlemen callers of the Red Horse brothel in someplace in Nevada. And, you know, do you really have to be psychic to get the answer to that one? So, you know, pollution is something you want to stay away from. This is another job, this being the project management talk that we're going on here. This is another job of the project manager, is to make sure that the viewers are not polluted.
So that you would change that to the task.
Not as easy as it sounds, actually.
So the target is a person. Describe the person at the present time. And so that's the project manager converts the language and protects the viewer from being polluted.
That's right. And the project manager also has to know the viewer and know their capability. For some viewers, you say something like, the target is a person. And that viewer is going to say, okay, that narrows it down to presently almost 7 billion. Fine, I'll do the work. Another viewer will say, oh, I just saw Kane give a lecture on, you know, television about why he should be president or something like that. I'll bet that's who it is. And so for some viewers, you can't even say that. You can't even say the front loading. You just have to say something like, this is project 9704, question 3, what's the answer? And even still, just doing that, there are still viewers who will jump to conclusions. Their imagination kicks in, man, something they saw on TV or something they just got through reading in the newspaper kicks in, and they pollute themselves. This is something that the project manager has to know about each and every viewer who is going to work with them.
So much for objectivity. Good grief. Oh, any more questions? It's 10:09 and we've been at it about an hour. And questions are always welcome. I've been trying to pull some terminology ideas and points of general interest in education from CR Viewer.
Michael asked a question. He said, are there companies really currently looking to hire CRVers and or form CRV departments? Like I say, the ones for whom we have trained CRV remote viewing teams have been more interested in using their own employees who already have security agreements with the company and all that, and they sort of shy away from outside people because they don't have the control over that. Somebody, you know, all somebody has to say is, oh, I work for company XYZ as a psychic, and all of a sudden XYZ's stock goes plummeting through the basement and all that. And so they've been very hesitant to hire outside people. But yeah, there are companies who are looking to hire remote viewers, and generally what you're going to find is that there are disclosure agreements. There are all kinds of forms you're going to have to sign, and generally they want to hit you with, well, they want their intermediary to be a lawyer. And because, you know, the attitude of the populace today is that they would be afraid to work with a company that hires a psychic. And even though controlled remote viewing is not psychic work, it's science, it still has the bad rep. So yes, there are companies who have their own departments, and there are companies who are out actually looking to hire CRVers. Almost every one of them that have looked and hired psychics have had a bad experience. Everyone that has hired trained and qualified CRVers has had a very pleasant experience, and I get back some very good reports. And in order to answer the next question, when they hire me to send them trained remote viewers or to even recommend remote viewers, they contact me through lawyers, and I have to sign non-disclosure agreements too. And so so what I have to do is I have to find out what kind of business they do, what their needs are in information gathering, and then go look in the database and find the individual that I could recommend. And so a lot of people don't believe in putting their information and their session results into databases. Guess what? They don't get called.
Well, things are getting a little quiet.
I do have one question.
Go ahead.
Question is, hopefully my mic is not over-modulating. Is it better to be first trained at...
Oh, you just cut out, Jed. Is it better to be first trained what? Oh, Jed lost his mic. Oh. Lost your mic. Would you like to try that again, please?
Or just type the question into the chat area.
And Jed, I'm not too sure what happened there, but as Lynn said, you can type your question in and we can read it for you. Or if for some reason you're having mic problems that you weren't having before, you may need to go out and come back in. Oh, I can hear you typing. And while he's doing that, we do have another question. I hear. Lynn, why don't you go ahead while Jed gets squared away with his question again. What curriculum, training level, experience level would you suggest one have before looking for real work in CRV? That's from Michael.
I forgot how to, which button I should push to talk. I would suggest before you get out into the real world that you at least get through the intermediate level of training. The basic training actually covers almost everything you're going to be doing in all of remote viewing, but in its most basic form. When you get through the intermediate, you have been exposed to the tools and the information that will get you through probably 99% of everything you'll ever do in the real world. You need to practice before you go out and say, you know, I'm a remote viewer. And you need to practice, do the practice sessions. I mean, we have over 250 right there on the website, and they're all good targets. And put the information in the database. That's not only for me so that I can recommend you to people, but if you look in the database, there are buttons where it will analyze your work and tell you what your own strengths and weaknesses are, and you can rely on the strengths you have and go out and actually advertise that you have those strengths because it's proven. I mean, database is taken as proof these days. You can also see what your weaknesses are so that then you'll know what specific things to practice in so that you'll get better at those things. And so in answer to your question, I would say that have at least the intermediate training, get lots of practice, and database. Listen, that database will tell you more about yourself than your imagination will. And we tend to forget unpleasant things. And the fact is that you really need to know what your own strengths and weaknesses are. You're not going to be good at everything. And so I think those requirements, practice, 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 and get at least through the intermediate training. One of my students one time asked me, he said, what do I have to do to be the best remote viewer in the world? And I said, 3 things. 1, get good training. 2, practice, 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 and get more practice. And he said, okay, what's the 3? And I said, wait for me to die. And he said, well, I can facilitate that. but no, those are the things. Get the training, get the practice, database so that you honestly know yourself. Once you've done that, hey, the world is your oyster, so to speak. And what you get is pearls.
I still have to put a plug in for advanced, though. I mean, to be able to retask a viewer is really important, and the more background and training they have in the advanced levels could make or break getting a good answer for your customer.
That's right. The advanced level goes into mostly scalar type information, getting exact details, getting exact dates on a scale, getting sizes, getting the number of people in a crowd or something like that. And it has tools that you can use. You're exposed to them in the basic course, but you're actually taught how to use them once you get into the advanced course. Now, if you're doing business work, yeah, you can definitely use the tools that are taught in the advanced course. If you're doing other things that are going to require scalar type information, how much, how many, what size, and things like that, yeah, you need those tools. But like I say, for the general remote viewing, the tools that you learn, if you practice them in the intermediate course, they're going to get you through probably 99% of everything you'll do in remote viewing.
Well, Gary, I see you. I'm glad to see you here. We've been going on this for a little bit, about an hour and 20 minutes now, but I gave you a mic, and feel free to join in and ask any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Holding way here on the East Coast, so I just happened to see the notice. I appreciate being able to join tonight.
We're glad to have you. And we lost Jed. He might have stepped out and tried to sign back in again, because he had mic trouble there.
Just let me say that we have several students who have already taken on some project management work, Teresa being one of them, and has done some good work. And we have several other students who are also doing the same and have done the same. And if you're going to be a remote viewer, I would highly suggest that you get training in project management, in analysis, in how to monitor correctly without polluting, and so forth, because it lets you see the process from all the different sides. And once you do, you really start understanding the process in a way that you never would if all you got was the viewer training. And I'm not trying to sell courses here. What I'm trying to get across is that the more you know about the remote viewing, the better you're going to be. And so, you know, you can do the viewer work, but basically what you're doing is you're contacting your subconscious, asking it a question, writing the answer down, and moving to the next question. And so to completely understand the process, you should really round out your training so that you can act as in any position when you get into a team. You can be the analyst, you can be the project manager. Next big project you have, you can be a viewer. Next big project, you can be a report writer or a database manager or whatever. And it really helps to know the whole thing and be well-rounded.
Jed's back, and we'll see how his audio is working. He typed in that he lost it. And David has a question. His hands in the air.
To know if it's fair to ask how one recognizes when the question tasked is not the question the customer wanted answered while you're in session.
You have just hit on one of the really hard things a project manager has to do. It's exactly like the example I gave. The guy asked me to describe his house. And he didn't live in a house. He lived in a trailer. And there are people who will task you with lies. There are other people who will try to hide the question and sort of ask around it to see if they can get the answer. If you ever worked for the CIA, well, my sympathies, but if you ever work for the CIA, what you're going to find is they never ask a question directly, and then when you give the answer, they will tend to lie to you as to whether you got it right. And if you got it completely right, they will say that you're not qualified to hear feedback on the information you gave them. And a lot of times they would come out and confiscate the session itself because I didn't have the security clearance enough to see the session that I had written down on the paper myself. And so, you know, you got to know the customer you're working for. But how can you tell when the customer is lying to you or trying to beat around the bush and hide their question?
Well, if you were psychic, you'd know that already.
Experience, I think, is probably the only answer. You get burned enough times, you start getting sensitive to the heat. And I know I've been burned enough times that when I'm getting a question and it's not the real question or it's a lie, I tend to really overreact And I messed up on this radio interview because everything I got in my session was about a trailer. And since the guy was a friend, I said he wouldn't do that to me. And so sure enough, I fell into his trap. And, you know, but I had the feelings. They were there. And experience, that's the answer.
Sounds almost like detecting the ambiance of the question.
Very much so. And detecting the ambiance of the person asking the question, too. I don't know if you know the 4 basic rules of interrogation or not, but they definitely apply in this case. Rule number 1 is pay attention to what a person says. Rule number 2 is pay attention to how they say it. Rule number 3 is pay attention to what a person doesn't say. And 4 is pay attention to how they go about not saying it. And it's the same with a project manager when they deal with a customer. Quite often, you have to pay more attention to what they don't say and how they go about not saying it than you do what they actually ask you to do.
Very much.
Jed, do you want to try your question again? You can type it in if that's easier if you're having troubles.
Hey, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can.
The question before was, in which order would it be best to be trained, as a project manager, an analyst, or as a viewer?
When I train the personnel for a corporation, the corporation decides what role each one will play. But as far as you going into it yourself and all, the remote viewing itself is the primary thing. Once you learn the process from the remote viewer's viewpoint, you automatically know how you want to be treated, how you want to be exposed to the information. You know what should be done with the information you provide, and you get a feel for the whole process that is basic to the process. Then when you start training in the other disciplines, you know, the project manager and so on, you know firsthand how you want to be treated. You'll wind up treating the other person the same way.
Good question. I do think you do spell that out pretty well on the site, what is required before people would think about taking some of the postgraduate courses.
There are rare instances when we will train a person out of order, but generally we start everybody off with a basic remote viewing course, and that lets them not only learn to remote view, but also to get a feel for the whole process. And I guess an analogy would be like the military. You may hire on as a computer programmer or a cook or whatever, but they always train you in how to be an infantryman as well, simply because, you know, if the enemy comes over running, your establishment, they're not looking for a cook. You know, they're you want to grab a gun and be able to do the basic work, and so in remote viewing the same way, you want to start off with the very basics of it, and once you get the basics, hey, then go to your own specialty, to that part of the remote viewing process which appeals to you most. We have several people who are very good, excellent remote viewers, who have found that they prefer to be a project manager, or they prefer to be an analyst or something like that. and simply because they enjoy the job more than the viewing. And so, but I mean, when push comes to shove, we've got another viewer.
I can't imagine analyzing a session without knowing how to view, because you have to be able to recognize things. Well, you're welcome. And we are looking at 10:31. So we've been at this for 90 minutes and probably should be thinking about wrapping it up.
I hope that everybody has gotten something out of this, and I hope that people who watch the video later will get something out of it too. And if anybody has any questions, we have the website. The website has my email address, and I get sometimes up to 100 email a day, and so it may take me a while to answer, but I try to get it answered. And so, if anybody has any questions, let me know, and we'll get an answer to you somewhere or another.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Lyn, and sharing all of your vast knowledge about control remote viewing, project management in particular. As you tell us in class, we only learn a fragment actually in class, and practice, and participation teaches us volumes. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for coming, everyone. We appreciate it, and it was a good discussion. Sometimes it takes a little bit of thinking to pull those kernels out, but we had a lot of good questions. Good to see you, Lyn. Hope you're well and enjoying retirement. Uh-oh.
Actually, these days I am. I clean my office out to the wall, and I'm organizing and getting myself organized. Saturday has finally come when I actually get things done, and I'm loving it. I'm happy.
Oh, good for you. All right. Well, with that, I am going to go ahead and make myself a presenter again, just so that we get your name and the project management title and everything in the recording, and tell Linda that we love and miss her, and hope you guys are all feeling well, and stay warm down there.
Thank you, and thank all of you for being here.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, definitely that.
Thanksgiving. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you.
Right. Good night, everyone.